The holiday season is upon us, and that means one thing: spending time with family, which can be a great time for gaming, but not every game is going to end well. Sometimes it might result in fights, sometimes people might be feeling uncomfortable, and occasionally it might just lead to some general awkwardness. But don't worry, because middle-aged gaming is here to help you know which games to avoid and which ones you can play if you want to continue having those family functions. But before we begin, there are going to be a few rules on today's games. First of all, they must be multiplayer because, of course, if you're playing with family, you need to be able to play with your family. And also, while they can flirt with the line, I'm not going to be covering any games that totally cross it into territory that's just completely not appropriate for a family setting. So, genital jousting is out. And with those rules in place, I would like to remind you to like and subscribe if you enjoy our content, so that way it'll be easier to find us in the future if you want to see more videos like this one. So let's get right into it. Today we are covering the bottom 10 games to play with family. So starting us off, we have Geopolitical Simulator. Now, I've been told there are two things you should not talk about in polite company, and those are religion and politics. Geopolitical Simulator does not cover religion, so already it's 50% acceptable in polite company. Now, this may be an older game and the UA can be kind of daunting. It's not all that pretty and probably won't be that friendly for younger minds, but it is functional and it'll make a great one of those stories for, we had to walk uphill both ways, except in this case it's we had to click to open that window and then drag down and use this slider and all that great stuff that young people just don't seem to enjoy so much anymore. But if you're really wondering why I wouldn't recommend this game, it's because if you've ever played Monopoly, you just know how cutthroat some of these games can be. Take that, but add the extra complications of adding supply and demand and taxes to the equation. Inevitably, people are going to be making some bad deals. On top of that, in real life, if you want to be successful politically, you kind of need to plan for the future. You need to kind of, you want to keep your country lasting for the next 100 or thousands of years. But this is a video game, which means there is an end goal and you do want to win. So crushing your enemies is actually a little bit more of a better plan here than it would be in real life. If you want to age like a president, go ahead and, start up Geopolitical Simulator, have fun, enjoy it with your family. And with that, we're going to be moving on to number 2 on our list, Mount Your Friends. Now, I was born in the 80s, but I really cut my teeth on gaming in the 90s, and my formative years were really at peak era jiggle physics, and I'm not going to deny, I am not adverse. Dare I even say I'm a fan. But I'm at least politically correct adjacent, and I believe that games really should be for everyone. Now, that doesn't mean that I think every game should appeal to everyone, but I do believe everyone should have games that appeal to them. This is not a less is more situation. No, more is more. Don't get rid of the jiggle physics. Double down. What we really need is more. We need wiggle physics. And Mount Your Friends has that in spades. The goal of the game here is to climb as high as you possibly can. And you're going to be doing that by going hand over fist, with your controls. Let go with one hand, move the second one up, grab on, release the first hand, move it up, grab on again, and it can be kind of frustrating. If you've played something like Octodad, you have an idea of what kind of thing you're going to be trying to do here. But frustration is part of the appeal, right? If the Soulsborne crowd has taught me anything, it's that frustration is part of the charm, because apparently the more I want to throw my controller at the screen, the more fun I'm having, or supposedly anyway. But this game is actually fun, and it is pretty goofy. That said, if your mother walks in at just the wrong camera angle, it could cause a few problems, which makes this game a really great game to play in the right company, among your friends. A lot of fun, but let's face it, the game is called Mount Your Friends, not Mount Your Family. That said, I guess there's room for a sequel, which actually there is a sequel, and now it's in 3D, so, if you really wanted to get that dong a-wiggling, here's your chance to see it go in all directions. But moving on to a game that at least tries to pretend like it's family friendly, we have Worms. Now, this is the original Battle Royale game, or at least one of the original Battle Royale games, as this game is all about the last worm or last man standing. And what makes this game so much fun is just the variety of weapons. There's lots of unique weapons here. You got bananas that explode into smaller bananas. You've got bazookas, baseball bats, bunker busters, basically anything that starts with a B and then some. But having the right arsenal is only half the battle. The other half is having good maps. And the maps in this game aren't exactly fair. A lot of modern games really try to have an even map to make it appealing to everyone, you know, games like League of Legends or something like that. But in this, the maps are completely random. And they're fully destructible as well. So yes, you can kind of shape it to, you know, benefit you a little bit more. But bad placement early on can really ruin a game for you. Gravity is not your friend, and as we know, runs downhill, so if you're at the bottom and in the middle of a map, you're just getting it from all sides. And as we know, it's easier to shoot a fish in a barrel than to lob a grenade out of it. So if you have that one competitive cousin who always throws a tantrum when things don't go his way, 𝙎𝙪𝙥𝙦 can be a beautiful thing. You might not be allowed back in the house next year, but it's a beautiful thing. But you can actually kind of accommodate this a bit because you can do custom maps. Way back when in Worms Armageddon, you could import JPEGs. That ultimately resulted in me having a fair few Tifa Lockhart shapes maps, which actually worked out pretty well. So, you know, I'm not complaining. But it does go back to that whole mom walking in at the wrong time thing, right? So next up, we have Multiverses. Now, this is a platform brawler, and there's quite a few that I could have chosen from. I would have gone with Passbar or PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, but not too many people are rocking the PS3 these days. It did just totally flub the premise, though. They just tried to reinvent the wheel, and it just didn't work. They really should have copied the Super Smash formula, and if they had, or if they do, I will be there day one. But that's such a relic of the past that I really wanted to go with something a little more modern, which is why I went with Multiverses. So the reason I'm really not recommending this game for a family function is just if you have two skilled players that know what they're doing and you put a third person in that mix, it's so easy for that person just to get ganged up on. They're just going to get passed back and forth like the ball in a game of monkey in the middle. Another problem is that some characters sometimes just have broken move sets. You know, occasionally you'll get one attack that you can just spam over and over and over again, and it just completely ruins the fun of anybody that's trying to get past you. For us, way back in the day, playing Super Smash Bros. Melee, that was Marth and Roy. You know, they just had this downward sword swing that if you got knocked off the level, there was just no way you were getting back on, and it got to the point where we just banned them altogether. Now, you may be wondering why I'm just not recommending Super Smash itself, and frankly, it's because it just has a far larger variety of characters. I mean, if there is one person who's just way better than everyone else, there's still probably a few characters out there they're not that familiar with that you can kind of make them take up as a handicap, and that'll even the odds a little bit. But with Multiverses, it's still a relatively small game with a relatively small roster, and so as such, it's much easier for someone just to, you know, find one character, get really, really good at that one, and then just kind of ruin everyone else's fun. And that brings us to number 5 in our entry, Ultimate Chicken Horse. Now, at a glance, this is a great game for the whole family. You play as cute animals, you can dress them up. The premise is super simple, just get from point A to point B, but here's the thing, A to B is not so simple. A lot of times there's going to be a big pit or obstacle in the middle of the level, and you're going to need to get around it. And to do this, you're going to need to actually build the level. And you're going to want to do that in a way that can get you from A to B, but also that gets you from A to B much more easily or much more quickly than everyone else. And when doing that, chaos is going to ensue. Some people just want to watch you suffer, and they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that nobody makes it to that finish line. Other people are just going to be naturally better at platformers, and they're going to thrive and have no problem. But for those people who aren't that great at platformers, they could really struggle, and the skill difference is really where the trouble begins. So if little Timmy keeps slipping on ice and falling into a bottomless pit, or just can't get the timing right on that buzzsaw, you know, he's going to storm off, throw a tantrum, we're all going to have a good laugh, Aunt Jenny's going to come back out, put us in our place, scold us for being bullies, and we're still going to be laughing on the inside, but outside the mood is ruined, and, you know, game over, nobody's having fun anymore. And for that same reason, I cannot recommend number 6 on our list, Party Animals. And again, on the surface, it looks like a great family game. Cute fluffy animals, cute costumes, But this game is kind of a combination between Ultimate Chicken Horse and Multiverses. By that I mean that there's a lot of different levels, and a lot of them are going to be that last man standing kind of thing, similar to Multiverses. Although some levels will have you working at least somewhat together, kind of like Ultimate Chicken Horse. Level variety here is really what makes this game special. Sure, there's the floppy critters capitalizing on a more child-friendly version of wiggle physics, but really it's the levels. And a lot of times they're going to be throwing a wrench into the mix. Sometimes you might have a level that breaks apart or degrades, it gets smaller over time. Sometimes you're going to have weapons that are just flying left and right that you can grab and smack people around with. Sometimes you will be working on a team though, they do have various sports games like soccer or football, that sort of thing. And they do, again, have games where you are working together. For example, you might have to fuel a train, throwing the coal into the furnace to get it moving. But that's where complications can begin to arise. First of all, the controls will take some getting used to. Things can be a little bit floaty, and it can be frustrating, when you're not getting that instant input that you wanted. Now, it's real cute to watch everybody flopping around and headbutting and swinging fists or occasionally a weapon around. But again, you're going to have the same issue as Multiverses. You might end up with people that are ganging up on one weaker player, and that person's going to get upset. And it's not always going to be on purpose either, because this game is chaos. It's hard to tell what's going on, and it's really hard to tell what's happening on purpose and what's just purely happening by accident. But ultimately, tears will flow, and again, that's going to be a problem unless you're some kind of uncle or aunt who likes to bully the little ones just a little bit. And I'm not making a confession here. I'm just saying, that might seem fun at first, but, once that happens and then we have to turn off the game and then again, nobody's having fun. So might want to avoid party animals. And speaking of parties, the next game on our list is Mario Party, which I've already mentioned one Nintendo clone here with Multiverses, and I'm going to mention another one later. So I figured, you know what? I should probably include at least one Nintendo game. Now, first off, I'll admit, Mario Party can be a lot of fun, but again, you're going to have the right crowd of people if you want to play. There's lots of mini games, lots of variety, and because of that, there's going to be a lot of skill issue going around. Now, to keep everyone happy, you could kind of handicap the higher level players, but then they're just holding back, they're kind of bored, and mini games, they're not overly complex, so, you're not going to be really engaged if you're trying to hold yourself back to help boost those lower players. And for the really low players, they're just getting frustrated, they're just losing over and over again, falling further and further behind, and they're not having fun. So the only people that are really having fun here are kind of your mid-level gamers, the casuals. They might be happy, but everyone else is just kind of like, whatever. Now, if everyone in your family is an adult, you could probably make a fun drinking game of this. Every time somebody wins, they have to take a shot. That way, if somebody's dominating the field, they're slowly getting sloshed and allowing everyone else to catch up. But if you got small kids around, unfortunately, that's not going to be an option. And since we're already on Nintendo, we might as well get it out of the way. The second Nintendo clone on our list, Morhoon Kart. And it is very, very generous of me to call this game a clone. So if you haven't heard of this franchise, great, lucky you, because oh my god, it gets worse with each entry. Now, the early games in this franchise were actually legitimately kind of fun. I was introduced to them by my German teacher, Frau Ray, or as my one classmate who couldn't figure out how titles worked used to call her, Miss Frau Ray. But anyway, Frau Ray, she tried to introduce us to German culture, which if you have not seen the music video for Blümchen's Ich bin wieder hier, look it up. It's an experience. But another way that she tried to introduce us to it was with this game, Morhoon 2. Now, Morhoon 2 was basically just a duck hunt kind of game. You just had your mouse, little chickens would fly by, you would try to shoot them out of the sky. Occasionally, you might be able to shoot some other things in the background, like a spider or something like that. But for whatever reason, this franchise just took off and went in every possible direction. And as I said, they got worse every single time. I don't know what's going on in Germany, but I can only assume this is some kind of UA Bowl level tax exemption scheme. So first of all, it is a kart racer, so you basically just hit go and then just go. That's it. You just go as straight as you can, follow the course, don't fall off. But that's easier said than done. The tracks are super narrow, which means that you're going to be hitting the walls all the time and just flying off of corners all the time. The weapons themselves don't even work all that well. You know, you might be looking straight at a guy and shooting a rocket out, and it just flies off to the left for no reason whatsoever. It's just all around a miserable time. To make it worse, this game actually got a re-release where they upped the graphics and then just cut other content for no explicable reason. So if you're going to play a kart racer, you know, just go with Mario Kart or Crash Team Racing. Or if for whatever reason you actually were playing Passbar that I mentioned earlier because you have a PS3 laying around, you know, boot up Mod Nation Racer. That was a solid game. You know, you might still get into a few fights because, you know, again, you know, some people are winning and some people are losing consistently, but at least you're having fun, right? Which brings us to today's runner-up, which isn't even really a runner-up because these games aren't really in any order. I mean, a bottom 10 list, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. Who really cares what goes where? But anyway, next up is Overcooked, which can actually be a lot of fun. To play this game, you're going to be preparing meals as a team. Each person is working at a different station, and as they say, teamwork makes the dream work. So when you really start working together as a well-oiled machine, mwah, chef kiss. It is a beautiful thing. But as we know, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and if one person drags the game down, it can turn into a literal bloodbath. And I'm serious here, it gets bad. I have a friend who has 2 sons, and the younger son just couldn't seem to keep up, and the big brother just got so mad. It turned into a whole thing. Big fight. I wasn't there, but I heard it got real nasty to the point that that game is now completely banned in their household. You know, she just deleted it off of every system because they just couldn't handle it. So if you have high-strung family members who are just a smidge of a control freak, may want to avoid this one. And talking about control freaks, that brings us to the final game on today's list, Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. This is a game designed for backseat drivers, and I have a few in my family. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to put my wife on the spot, but anyway, I digress. Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes is the perfect game for backseat drivers. Now, this game is best played in VR, where you have one person who can look at and manipulate the bomb in 3D, while everyone else is reading a set of instructions. So what you're going to need to do is describe the bomb. You know, battery is here, there's a red wire there, there's a blue wire coiled around this thing, and based on your description, everyone else is going to have to be looking it up in the manual. And once they find it, they're going to have to tell you how to disarm this bomb. So they're going to be relaying instructions. Okay, cut the red wire first, and then take out this component, and then cut the blue wire, that sort of thing. So communication in this game is paramount, and it can be very, very fun. But it can also go very, very south very, very quickly. But of course, that's part of the fun. Unless, of course, you've got some really high-strung people who just get real upset when things aren't happening the way they're telling you to. So it may be a bit much if you have people with high blood pressure. But that's it for our list. Now, obviously, you can play any of these games with your family. We're just having some fun here. The whole thing's tongue-in-cheek. Consider these as kind of a half recommendation. Unless, of course, you do like starting fights in your family, you know, and then just consider it a full recommendation for every last one of these games, except for Moorhoon. Avoid that one, please. But what games do we miss? What games would you not play with your family? The only rule that I'm going to give you here is that it is multiplayer, preferably local, so that everyone can be sitting in the same room playing together. And, you know, tell us why you wouldn't recommend it. Is it too violent? Is it inappropriate for grandpa? You know, is it going to give him a heart attack? Or is it just one of those games that's just extremely frustrating in a group? We love your feedback and are always excited to see comments. And you know what? Feel free to include card and board games as well. Honorable mention to Munchkin. I love that game, but I do have friends who refuse to play it. You know, I'm always looking for someone else to con into playing with me. And one last thing before we go, again, don't forget to like and subscribe for more gaming content in the future. And with that, happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, 新年快乐! Happy holidays, everyone.